Okay, hi Richard, how are you today?
Yes, very well, thanks, Kate. How are
That
you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So obviously we're here today to talk to you about the importance of engaging tenants with their inventory remotely, especially now for the times that we're in with all of these COVID alert levels increasing and some areas unfortunately having new restrictions coming into place. So I think a lot of people will find themselves back working from home again as we see the new restrictions take effect, which means the importance of remote working solutions will have certainly increased. It'd be good to get some insight on where Inventory Hive would fit into all of this, Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the concept of getting tenants to engage remotely has prior to COVID was very much about inventories themselves specifically, because let's say tenants due to move into their property, they can get an email and sign and confirm receipt, and then when they move in, they can interact and feed back with it. But when COVID came along, it's kind of brought about the concept of that not just being about an inventory, but also being about doing it for a management visit as well. So if you have a tenant that's maybe shielding and the agent can't get to the property to do a physical management visit and check up on the tenancy, make sure there's no breaches, see if the tenant has any issues about maintenance, that stuff has always happened in person, face to face. So we quickly came about with our concept of virtual visits, which is essentially a self-inspect way for a tenant to receive a simple email, press a button and open a web page where they can answer some questions. So in doing that, of course, it's COVID safe because there is no, a physical visit involved. So, but most importantly, the tenant can raise issues. So if they have a maintenance issue, they can still do it. They can add a photo, add a comment. We're even doing an update at the moment, which we're going to launch over the next week or so, whereby they can also send in some general overview photos of the room as well. So essentially, they can do their own self-inspect report. And it's interesting because the uptake of this has been phenomenal. We've created about 25,000 of these reports, since bringing that in. And if you think about all the travel that's saved on, the issues that perhaps have been raised that wouldn't have if that ability to do it remotely wasn't there, because those visits just wouldn't have happened. So for those agents, they would have just seen a big backlog, really. So what I do, whilst COVID obviously, is causing all sorts of issues and is tragic, it's actually for a lot of businesses, it's driving them forward to turn towards technology to find better solutions, really. So I suppose out of bad situations there can come some positive outcomes.
Definitely. I think we've seen a lot of that, a lot of progress with prop tech over the last 8 to 10 months. So you've hit the nail on the head there, I think. And just want to touch on, I'm sure there's some agents who might, want to know how user friendly that is for their tenants, because I know that, not all tenants may be up to speed with computers and everything else. So presumably it's very, very user friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I think, as a business, we've been live now as a software platform for just over 4 years. And our ethos has always been about making sure that it's simple to use for the person that's using the software initially. But because we have a lot of interaction with tenants, it's really important that those screens are simple to follow. Because if they're not, then you're not going to get that engagement, and actually they find that frustrating. So we put a lot of effort into that. So we even create like simple infographics now as well, like visual diagrams about step one is this, and you upload your photo, etc. So on those PDFs as well, we've even started to put like a little play button on them as well, so you could have your own logo on a short one-sided A4 guide that you can share with the tenant before, so they know what to expect. And when they press the little play button, it opens up a quick YouTube video which tells them how it works and what they need to do. So it's you've always got to work on the assumption that that someone will struggle with it for whatever reason, and sometimes it's not down to their own fault. It could be that they've got some kind of weird and wonderful device that's maybe out of date and there's a problem with it. So that's why I think you're right. I think it's ultimately making it simple to use, but also about how you communicate what to expect, that managing those expectations, which, I think software platforms in general are getting,
Definitely,
hopefully.
definitely. Well, we hope so. And I suppose maybe a little less COVID related, but definitely still relevant, would be, the fact that Inventory Hive would sort of facilitate ways for agents to reduce any disputes around inventories as well. Did you want to talk about that as well, Richard? Just give me a bit of information on how that could be the case.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because I took part in a webinar yesterday with the National Residential Landlords Association, and that was all about how to avoid common tenancy deposit disputes. And I think and again, I think COVID has really pushed things forward in that, in years gone by, when you were getting an inventory signed off, it was commonplace to actually physically meet the tenant at the property and walk them around and get them to sign off the report. Now, I've never thought that was a good way of doing things. That's just from my own personal perspective. And that was part of the desire to set up Inventory Hive in the first place, that I had a bad experience, from renting a property, and felt that there should have been a better way of doing things. Because let's face it, if you're a tenant, you're moving into a house, you've got your removal van waiting outside, you want to get your stuff in. It's quite a stressful experience. The last thing you want to do is walk around looking at the skirting board. And obviously the problem with that is if the tenant's not engaged with it and they're just signing it to tick a box and then move on, then the chances are they're going to miss off information, that maybe wasn't on the inventory. And, the agent creating the inventory, they're only human. We all miss things off. So therefore, the approach that we went down, and we kind of, pioneered this approach whereby, the tenant signs and confirms receipt. They do it on a web page, so they're not downloading an app. There's no passwords involved. It's not complicated, but they literally sign a couple of days before they're given the keys to move in to say, I've got my report, which then means that when the agent gets that alert back on their system, they know that it's safe to give the tenant the keys, because at that point, there's never a time they won't have a completed report. Because when the tenant then moves in, they then have so many days, which can be controlled by the agent, in which they can feed back. So, let's just say tenant moves in and says, after, maybe day 2, after they've got their stuff in, they maybe find that, the shower hinge is loose, or the drawer falls off when you open it, or there's a stain on the carpet. They go to that item, they add a comment, and they take a snap. When that comes back, the agent can then, respond to that. The landlord can respond to it, whoever it is that's using the platform. Now, the benefit, of course, of that is you get more detail. You kind of like, sometimes disputes can happen because tenants will say, well, it was like that when I moved in. Now, if it was like that when they moved in, then obviously they've had the chance to raise it, so it doesn't become an issue. Of course, if it wasn't like that when they moved in, then it protects the agent, protects the landlord, because there's no dispute over that. And I think, in years gone by, again, tenants would only really engage with that report when they were doing the checkout. They'd only look at their inventory and go, oh, how was it? And then that in itself can cause issues, really. So I think that's where tech can be good, because it allows things to be done at a convenient time, and there's less, human effort in doing that physical check-in. You could do an inventory, a week before the tenant moves in and not have to go back. It could all be done remotely, which obviously with COVID is the safest way of doing things. But actually, we've been saying for the past few years that it's the better way of doing things anyway, because it's less pressure on the tenant at that moment in time.
Absolutely. And I think when you mentioned convenience, like we're living in a world where, people's expectations are becoming higher every day. And in terms of everyone, including myself, I am one of the, worst for it, where, I want things to happen quickly, and but I want them to happen efficiently as well. And I think the last thing I know, from I've been a tenant in the past and moving into a property, and I'm thinking about 10 other things before I'm thinking about my inventory. So it definitely, I can see how it would help both sides. And it pulls everything out in the open, like you say, avoids any disputes or any kind of, well, it was like this or it wasn't. Everything's there in black and white, essentially. So just removing any kind of reason for dispute, which is quite nice from everybody's perspective, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've kind of learned as well over the past few years is that, a lot of these issues as well that tenants raise, they're not necessarily just about cleanliness. They could be like a maintenance issue. So there is a crossover between those things. But again, that's another great reason to use tech, because if the tenant says, "Oh, the tap's leaking," downstairs and it wasn't picked up, and when the tenant moves in, if they put it on their inventory, when the agent or the landlord's feeding back, we have it so they can integrate with, the maintenance platform. So they could say, well, actually, that's a maintenance issue. So it just connects it and sends the issue through. So that tenant doesn't have to phone up a week later and say, oh, I had a problem with it. I mean, if that's done on a paper-based system and done in person, then you don't get that, autonomy of like passing stuff through. And I think that's definitely where prop tech is going, isn't it? It's where you kind of, you choose the platforms that you want to play nicely with, and you just, fit the pieces together. That's the master plan anyway. It's not always that straightforward, and it does take time to build those integrations. But as long as the desire's there, I think, and I think COVID's really pushing that stuff forward, which is a great thing.
Definitely. I mean, I think this conversation today, hopefully a lot of agents will this will align with a lot of people and what's happening in their day to day at the moment, and hopefully can get some value out of it. But I do think, COVID has, like you say, has pushed most people forward into areas that they may not have thought about otherwise. So yeah, this being one, absolutely. But yeah, I think it's been very interesting hearing everything that Inventory Hive can do in relation to that, and I'm sure that there's agents out there who would find it really useful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're doing stuff that's not been done before, and I think it's not about doing it for the sake of it as well. Sometimes we're trying to really put stuff in that adds value, like we do 360 photos in there where we talk to the 360 cameras. So last Sunday we released it so they can flip those out into tours as well, without having to go back to the property, which again is all, useful stuff. But, it's, I think COVID is, as I say, that's the main thing that we've picked up on this year is it is pushing things forward at a faster pace, really. But, obviously we'd all like to see the back of it now anyway. But, in the meantime, it is what it is, isn't it? And we've got to do what we can and deal with these everyday issues and keep things going.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like you say, keep things going. And if we have these solutions that are coming along every day with updates and features, in response to things that agents are facing in their day-to-day tasks and how they've changed as a result of COVID, then that's the best way I think people can approach this. So yeah, I think we're definitely on the ball. Well, I like to think that we're on the ball anyway. But look, thank you very much for explaining that, and I've definitely gained some good insight there, which I'm sure other people will have as well.
Yeah, no, thank you ever so much. No, it's been lovely to talk to you, Kate, and hopefully speak soon.
Brilliant. All right, Richard. Thanks very much.
See you later. Take care. Bye.